Welcome, councillors, members of the public and staff. I declare the meeting open at 6:35 p.m. Like to give a special welcome to our resident Mr. Shute, who's up the back, who's attended today to learn a little bit about democracy, as he said in his own words. So welcome, Mr. Shute. So everyone at this meeting is reminded to conduct themselves in a polite and professional manner, keep communication factual, use appropriate language and tone. Do not use any defamatory or derogatory remarks. Defamation laws apply to addresses in public forum. I also ask councillors to observe the requirements under the Code of Meeting Practice and Meeting Etiquette. I remind all present that the video recording is an official record of council and may be made available to persons upon request in accordance with the Government Information Public Access Act 2009. No other recordings are permitted. So we'll begin tonight's meeting with an acknowledgement of country. So Bayside Council acknowledges the traditional custodians, the Gadigal and Bidjigal people of the Eora Nation, and pays respects to elders past, present and emerging. The people of the Eora Nation, their spirits and ancestors will always remain with our waterways and the land, our Mother Earth. So we've received apologies tonight from Councillor Douglas. So there are no further apologies or councillors seeking a leave of absence. Do I have a mover and a move by Councillor Sarvanovsky, seconded by Councillor Curry? Do any councillors wish to make any disclosures of interest? Okay, so we'll move on to the minutes of the previous meeting, which was the City Planning and Environment Committee meeting on the 9th of November 2002. Can I ask two councillors who are present at the meeting to move and second the confirmation of the minutes? Moved Councillor Muscat, seconded Councillor Barlow. So there's only 3 items on the agenda for tonight's meeting and no public forum. So we'll move to the next item, which is the reports. So we're dealing with the first report, which is item CPE 23.001, submission on proposed amendments to SEP Housing 2021, explanation of intended effect. This is page moved by Councillor Curry, seconded by Councillor Werner. Just might ask before we go into questions for a brief summary on this report, if we may.
Sure. Councillors, this is a proposal to amend the state government's housing policy that was on exhibition late last year. So the report just relates to a submission that we put in as a draft pending council's endorsement of it. The changes relate primarily to types of housing that are in demand but not supplied generally by the housing industry, so things like affordable housing, social housing, group homes and hostels, and supported housing of other types. So they're, on the face of it, they're all positive changes to try and encourage greater supply of those types of housing. Council officers are generally supportive of those measures to encourage greater supply of that type of housing. The things that we've highlighted in our submission relate more to the process by which these things are delivered. And just a couple of the items we've raised are around the incentives that are offered by way of bonuses. We're a little concerned that in some cases they might be a little generous and might generate development that's not in character with the housing around it that complies with council's local controls. The other issues that we've raised in broad terms are around the state government giving itself and other entities the ability to approve their own developments. And these relate to the New South Wales Land and Housing Corporation and also the approval of group homes. In summary, they're the issues that we've raised in the submission, which is attached as a draft. So if you have any specific questions, we can try and help you with those.
Yeah, thank you. Councillors, are there any questions?
Can I ask through the chair, so what's the proposed next steps and timelines as to these submissions?
Through your chair, the exhibition period ended on the 19th of December last year. I don't know, Josh, you know exactly the context of
falls really in their court as far as finalisation. Yeah.
Really unfair, and definitely they shouldn't get bonuses for that. And yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in this submission, so thanks for that.
Thank you, Councillor Werner, and I'd just like to reinforce that. So congratulations to staff, because this seems like another tactic of the state government to take control and take planning decisions away from local government. So thank you for that. Are there any further?
Madam Chairman, can I check this? Can we submit our submission to the local members? To Ron and Michael?
You can add that to
Yeah.
the recommendation.
Yep.
Because
Second that.
what my view is concerned is in relation to in Arcliffe, in Walker Street, the Department of Housing own land that can basically do whatever they want to do. So at least if we want our MPs to say, this is our solution, whilst there's an urgent need for accommodation, but you don't want to have one rule for one and one rule for someone else, particularly state government. We've seen what's happened at Arcliffe when we wanted to Highway.
Yeah.
Street. I still, to this day, I don't know how they're going to solve the parking there in traffic. I still
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Sarabanovsky. So can we add a point to that the submission is also forwarded to our state members? So
Happy to accept that.
thank you. So if there's no further comments, we'll vote on this item. All those in favour of the motion say yes. Aye. All those against say against. I declare the motion carried. So that takes us to item CPE 22.002, Summary of Responses from the Public Exhibition of the Draft Community and Verge Gardens Policy. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved Councillor Curry, seconded Councillor Barlow. We'll ask for a quick summary on this report before any questions.
Chair, I think we have Madeline online. This is reports come from the City Life Directorate and
Yes, I'm here. Hong Nguyen, the manager, had to take off at the last minute because he had some personal issues to deal with. So basically, the Verge policy was to give residents guidelines. Sorry? There's a bit of feedback, I think. Sorry. I thought someone was talking, but it was just me. Persevere. The purpose of the policy is to give residents guidelines of what can and can't be done with Verge Gardens. There's currently no guidelines for residents for what can and can't be done on verges. There are quite a lot of Verge Gardens across the LGA currently, some of which pose some risks to the public, and the policy is to give council a consistent way of responding to those issues as they arise.
Flick the mic on. Sorry, are there any questions, councillors? Councillor Muscat.
Through you, Chair, I'd like to seek clarification on the information in there in regards to insurance and who is responsible for that insurance for the Verge. I was a bit confused. Thank you.
So the question is around insurance. It's a bit hard to hear. So the policy recommends that. Sorry, Councillor Jansen, do you mind turning off the microphone? It's just the feedback. Yeah, thank you. So the policy recommends residents to put their verge gardens on to their household public liability insurance, but it's not absolutely necessary that they do. It's just a recommendation by the policy. So basically, they're not required to. I think that Fausto might be able to confirm the details of this. I think it was initially a recommendation from governance that there be something mentioned about household insurance covering the verge garden.
That's right. We've had a discussion around insurance. We understand that it may be costly or difficult, but so it'll be a matter for the resident to determine how best they will mitigate their liability, and the policy and the application will make it clear that they will be liable for any injury or damage.
Thank you. Councillor Muscat?
Just against, through you, Chair, seeking clarification. So in regards to pensioners who may or may not even have insurance, because there's quite a few in our community that don't, where do they stand legally then? Or where do we stand legally?
Shall I let you answer that one, Fausto?
Yes. Whilst it's on the road reserve, we will, council will include the resident or the property owner in any claim against council for damage or injury. So essentially, it will be at the property owner's risk if they choose to put in a verge garden, which certainly does not comply with our requirements. Our requirements specifically deal with the risk issue, and that's why there's certain provisions there to assist in mitigating against any claim or liability.
Thank you. Councillor Curry, do you have a question?
So I'm just trying to understand, so currently in the policy, it does or does not make reference to insurance in that process that you've just outlined?
We've left it discretionary with the property owner or ratepayer.
So in the scenario that Councillor Muscat gave, so you're suggesting that if someone wants to put in a verge garden, doesn't have insurance, and something occurs, what's the scenario?
If there is a claim, if there's an injury or damage, and there's a claim made, council would, if the matter is taken to court, council would join the property owner or the person that put in the verge garden as a co-defendant in any claim.
Thank you. So is there an agreement that the resident will sign that indicates that prior to them undertaking the verge garden?
There is an application form, and I believe that the letter of consent will outline the various conditions.
Thank you. Councillor Curry?
Can I ask another question? So say for example, this is a current scenario, a group of residents have put in a petition, not, I won't call it a petition, but a group signing thing to have a verge garden. And the person that's putting the application in wants to put it on this corner block, which actually belongs to someone else's verge, someone else's property, like it's not on their own verge. So we do have a process, don't we, where we liaise with the property owner of the house that the verge is sort of associated with?
Madeline, are you able to assist?
So in the policy, it says that the person who signs the application form or the checklist is supposed to be the property owner that's behind the verge. If it was like a sort of neighbour kind of community garden, they would have to put in more of a bigger application. So there's a checklist for small verge gardens where vegetation is under 1 metre. The policy outlines quite clearly what is and isn't allowed for the checklist. If you want to do anything more complicated than that, you actually have to complete a application, and I would assume that we would want to make sure we have all residents who are participating and who are adjacent to the verge or the verge gardens in front of their house must be party to that. I would assume. I hadn't considered multi kind of resident verge gardens. This was aimed more at your single household that wants to install a verge garden.
Yeah, if I can suggest that we look at putting in some sort of clause that says that any verge gardens have to be, consultation must take place with the property owner. You know, because I hate what's this scenario where it's presented and it's not cross-checked, and the person in the house is a tenant but not an owner of the property. So we've got to put that wording in there to ensure that consultation occurs with the property owner prior to any, you know, progressing further beyond the application stage.
I believe it does say in the policy that if you're a tenant, you must obtain permission from the property owner. So if you're a renter and you want to put in a verge garden, then you have to obtain permission from the property owner. I haven't got the policy in front of me, but I believe that's what it says.
As long as we have a process that ensures we get sign off from the property owner, if not, we cannot take tenants' words. But, you know, we've got to make sure that we've cross-checked that. So that's just a
people are
statement
supposed to
ensure that's put into the policy, that's all.
Yeah, sure, I'll double check that and make sure that it's clear.
Thank you.
So we're adding that to the recommendation that council include in the policy a requirement to consult with the property owner adjoining the location of the verge garden as part of the process. So the mover and
So
this
as part of the application process.
as part of the application process. So is the seconder happy with that wording? I just had a question also in relation to the size of the footpath. I believe I raised this last time. So the policy states that the footpath needs to be a minimum of 1.5 metres wide, and we do have some older footpaths in the LGA which are less than 1.5 metres wide. They're about 1.2 metres wide. So how will you address that in the application process?
I would assume that it holds that they can't, if are you talking about like a concrete path that's 1.2 metres wide, they still have to maintain a 1.5 metre width walkway, regardless of whether that's fully concreted or there's no concrete or it's partially concreted. That would be my understanding. I'm pretty clear that it's...
But I believe that would alienate some of our community because they have a smaller verge and a smaller footpath. So as Mr. Barber indicated last time, there are quite a lot of footpaths in the LGA that are quite narrow. So I just have concerns that the policy is leaving out some of our community.
I wasn't aware, and I'm not aware of how many footpaths that or verges that applies to, but we can definitely have a look at it. And I mean, the reason I understand that it's 1.5 metres wide is that's the standard footpath width. I'm not it's not my area of expertise, but as for safety measures, etc. So, yeah, I can certainly have a discussion with relevant staff people about that. And I don't know what the implications would be if we were to, I don't know, we'd have to word it somehow, specifically say that on certain footpaths that you're allowed to have a verge garden if it's less than a certain distance. I'm not sure. I'd have to have a look at it.
Can I suggest to councillors that we add a third point there, that that council investigates the different footpath widths and as to see whether there can be any reference or accommodation of footpath width, and see whether there can be any accommodation or
allowances made for footpaths under 1.5 metres in width.
I mean, regardless, I think it needs to be called out in the policy, whatever is deemed the suitable. Yeah.
Thank you. So we're adding a point 3 that council investigates different footpath width to accommodate or to make allowances to the to make allowances for footpaths under 1.5 metre wide in the policy.
Point 1 will need to change.
Oh, so yes, we're
Or there's gardens
with the following changes, yep.
with changes relating to 2 and 3.
So we're amending point 1 as well, that council adopt the draft community and verge garden policy with the following amendments, subject to the 2 and 3. Are you okay with accepting with those changes?
We're just saying investigate.
Yeah.
Because you've got to fill it out.
Yeah. So if there's no further questions, we'll now vote on this item. All those in favour? Oh, sorry, Councillor Werner.
Just one more question. I noticed in the feedback from residents that there was something about getting insurance through Garden Clubs of Australia. Do you know anything about this and how people would go about getting that kind of insurance if they can't get it on their home policy?
Sorry, I couldn't hear that.
Oh. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
One of the residents mentioned that they got insurance through Garden Clubs of Australia. I was just wondering if
Sorry, sound's dropped out again.
Before to provide advice.
Yes.
that
So-
would be great. I'm just concerned that people who, as Councillor Muscat said, some people might not have home insurance, or there might be tenants and so on, and obviously the owner doesn't want to, or you know, doesn't have the capacity to get the extra insurance, then there might be a possibility of going through Garden Clubs Australia
Or
equivalent, and yeah, I just think it'd be nice if council could provide some guidance on that, even if it's on the form.
So,
Sorry,
Councillor Saravinovsky.
Through you to, Greta, who's done Australia that are private?
I don't know, because it was mentioned in the residents made a comment about it, and that could be a solution for people who don't have another form of insurance.
Okay, so we're at, sorry, Councillor Saravinovsky.
Oh, I just, just a general question. How do we compare with this policy with other councils?
Madeline.
Sorry, sound's dropping in and out.
Madeline,
didn't get-
the question is, how does our policy compare to other councils?
In terms of insurance,
Oh, I think more broadly than that, more generally, the conditions that we have suggested in the policy, are they comparable to what people might experience in Randwick or Georges River or Inner West?
yes. So it was some time ago now when I reviewed the policy, but I reviewed policies from all our neighbouring councils, quite a few of them, and further afield. Our policy is probably quite prescriptive compared to some of those other councils. So I would say in terms of risk, we're probably, it's a fairly tight policy compared to other councils. Most councils, it's address it from a similar point of view, from a, risk to the public. If you're putting something on the verge, it's got to not pose a risk to the public. I think all the policies basically take that approach. So you don't want to put something on the verge that's going to trip somebody up, or if someone falls over, they're not going to fall on a stake or a spiky plant or something like that. You can't block sight lines, etc. In summary, I reviewed quite a few policies, definitely all our neighbouring councils, and I'd say it's pretty consistent, and ours is quite prescriptive.
And Madeline, Councillor Werner was asking before whether you had done any research or knew anything about Garden Clubs Australia. It's recommended as a potential insurer in the feedback that we got from the public.
I know that one of the community gardens, the Bay Community Garden, I'm not sure if they still do, but did purchase their public liability insurance through them. I don't know, I would have to check. I don't know if they would apply, or it would apply for individuals on Verge Gardens, but something I can look into.
Thank you, Madeline. So just to reiterate, we've added point 4 to the recommendation, which is that advice be obtained on insurance coverage that may be available through Garden Clubs Australia or equivalent, and information be provided as part of the application process. And I think we'll need to change point 1 to add in point 4 in points 2, 3 and 4. So the mover and seconder are happy with those changes. So if there's no further questions, we'll now vote on the item. All those in favour? So I declare the motion carried. So while we were debating the Verge policy, I'd like to welcome a couple more public to the gallery. So thank you for coming tonight and being part of our meeting. So we're moving on to item CPE 23.003, Clause 4.6, Variations to Development Standards Quarterly Report. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved Councillor Curry, seconded Councillor Saravinovsky. Can we have a quick summary of this report, please?
Sure, Chair. You would have seen this report before. This is a quarterly report that comes to Council about the mechanism that we can use to vary development standards through determining DAs. It's a requirement that we report quarterly, and also we submit returns to the Department of Planning and publish them on our website. So in this report, there's 2 applications listed where variations were granted in that quarter. Excuse me, and there's some details there about those individual situations. So yeah, it's just an information report for Council to note.
Thank you. Are there any questions, councillors?
Just a question, Chair, to clear up this above. When I asked something first, for the first one, the height is at 23 or 30, and what did that relate to?
Yes, through your chair, that first one is a variation to the height. It was a building on a mixed-use building on Botany Road, and while the variation is quite high numerically, it actually related primarily to a pergola and the lift over on the roof of the building.
Is that the hotel?
I don't know exactly which building it was here by the number, but that's why it sounds high, but it was fairly small elements of the building that went over the height limit.
Do you have a question, Councillor Curry?
I just wanted to double check. So, and what was the one in relation to 10 Isaacson Street? Is that the one? That's an additional height variation, is it, in relation to the second one?
Through your chair, so that application was for alterations and additions to a residence. The variation there was a 1% variation to the floor space ratio. So it did comply with the height and other key standards, but it was a very small variation to the floor space.
Thank you. So if there's no further questions, we'll vote on this item. All those in favour? All those against? I declare the motion carried. So there being no further items, I declare the meeting closed at 7:07 p.m.
Assets Committee meeting for 2023. Welcome councillors, members of the public. It's good to have you here, and staff. I declare the meeting open at 7:13 p.m. Everyone at this meeting is reminded to conduct themselves in a polite and professional manner and keep communication factual. I also ask councillors to observe the Code of Conduct meeting practice. I remind all present that the video recording is an official record of council and may be made available to persons upon request in accordance with the Government Information Public Access Act 2009. No other recordings are permitted. I too would like to acknowledge the land on which we meet tonight, the land of the Bidjigal and Gadigal, and pay my respect to elders past and present. Apologies. We have apologies as well as attendance by audio-visual link, so we'll deal with apologies first. So we have an apology from Councillor Douglas and an apology from Councillor McDougall, the seconder. Councillor Souness. All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. We have Councillor Fardell wishing to participate in this meeting by audio-visual link. May I have a motion, someone like to move and second that the councillor request to attend by audio-visual link be granted? Move Councillor Jansen, seconded Councillor Souness. All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. Are there any disclosures of interest that any council would like to make in relation to any items on this business paper? No disclosures of...
Item number, CWA 23.004. It's non-significant, non-peculiar, non-significant, because we're dealing with footpaths that actually put in a footpath on my street. So I'll stay here and talk about the rest of the streets.
Thank you, Councillor Souness. No other disclosures of interest? Okay. The minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on the 9th of November 2022. So can I ask two councillors who were present at that meeting to move and second? So moved Councillor Souness, seconded Councillor Barlow. You were, yep. All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. All right, we've got 4 items on tonight's agenda. There are no public speakers tonight. So the first agenda item is the Mascot Oval upgrade. A lot of work and effort has gone into this proposal, and it looks very, very well done and very professional. So thank you. And could I ask just to give a bit of an overview of the project, please?
Through you, Madam Chair.
I'll do a mover and a seconder first, excuse me. Moved Councillor Jansen, seconded Councillor Souness. Thank you, sorry.
Through you, Madam Chair. Mascot Ovals proposed for inclusion in the City Projects program for 23 and 24. The reason that we're proposing to upgrade these facilities is to meet the growing needs of the club and also the growing needs of the community in that area. There is a nearby development where there was a voluntary planning agreement, and that is able to fund the proposed works. We're proposing to update the sports amenity building, including the canteen, bring in accessible compliance for change rooms, public toilets, and also some upgrades to the grandstand, the club gym, bringing in rainwater tanks for irrigation and for flushing of toilets, and also to implement a walking track around the oval that can be used by the broader community. We've had some consultation with the club, and they are here to support the proposal this evening. They're very much in favour of what we are proposing. We have spoken to them as well about the program of works, and we're working around how we can do that to best place, not interrupt their season. So we'd be looking at a 2-stage approach where we could do some of the works early in the new year, which would not directly impact their work, their playing season, and then to build the main public amenities facility and sports building in the off-season.
Thank you, Ms Farrell. Are there any questions?
Just some comments. I think it's a terrific proposal. It's very exciting and it's going to be beneficial for the community, and the scope of works is very impressive. But just had some questions.
Can I just add, Councillor Jansen, and it's the oldest rugby league club in New South Wales as well, and
I was getting to
oh, sorry.
I noticed and because it's the oldest rugby league club in all of New South Wales, I'll get to another point about that in a little bit, but I noticed in the concept plans that the clubhouse, what we're referring to as the clubhouse meeting rooms, is going to be flush with the grandstands. So I'm wondering if there's any scope for that to be potentially a two-storey space that incorporates, some important elements that we can address, like women in sport, and we can have the inclusion of additional change rooms for women and meeting rooms. So do you have any information about the height of that club room?
Through you, Madam Chair. We haven't gone to that level of detail, but in looking at the concepts, we've tried to provide sufficient shade to that side. So that's why we were meeting the grandstand height. But one of the items that we will be looking at is that equitable facilities for men and women, and providing sufficient space for the sport to increase into future generations. Absolutely.
So also, with that height increase, could we also potentially look at, I know you haven't done the detailed concept, but I was just going to propose some additional, an item 3 that incorporates more items in the scope of work. So the scope of work for that clubhouse meeting room to include, equitable places for women to change, and community meeting room facilities that groups can come into to celebrate and, do whatever they need to do. The club currently sometimes uses that roof space to film their games, so they're climbing filming area, female
The proposed sports amenity would be around 200 square metres, which is in line with what we've been delivering at other spaces, but the gym gets an extension as well.
An actual community space where people get to meet, have their events, roughly.
So we haven't actually designed the spaces in between, but what I could suggest is that we come back with a detailed floor plan once we've met with the sporting club, because we'd certainly like them to have that input into how they use the space.
People want to have events and they want to put at least 100 to 150, maybe 200 people in that space, sitting down. So the bigger the better, and if there's an opportunity to create a balcony space where you can double up in use for this overview over the oval itself and videotape and so on, that opportunity is there because we're still preliminary.
We would need to confirm the plan of management and what's consistent with that. Just with places of public entertainment, we need to be mindful of function spaces. So in terms of the women's change rooms, the filming height, those sorts of things are all direct functions of sports facilities. But any function space, we would need to look at that separately.
Presentation at the end of the year, the club has a function, school presentation. That's where I'm headed. And if they use it for other things down the track, then we can explore the DA to be expanded as we do the plan of management. That could be a little bit away. But we're building a new building now. We're spending $4 million. It's still, I know it's only indicative, why not explore opportunities to make it bigger and better?
I guess my thoughts were that it wasn't necessarily a massive function space.
No,
That was
no,
more
no.
in line with like community meeting facilities where grassroots community groups can get together. So if there was one of the younger teams wanted to do some youth development or things like that, so the community could come and meet there, that the community
Because I was
that's
gonna say,
associated with
just
it.
the whole presentation night, and you've got maybe 10 teams, you need about 200 square metres to fill it. 100 is nothing.
So can I suggest we, in consultation with the club, look at potential opportunities for expanding that to accommodate. But I think with our real focus on women in sport, it's imperative that suitable change rooms are provided for them there. And they do have a growing female participation in rugby league and a very strong team in the competition too, which is wonderful for our locals.
So I just had another comment as well. You probably get sick of me referring to this one, but I think it's also important to keep some of those public art elements there as well that we have on site, such as the mural and things like that. But referring back to our adopted public art policy, I think we've got an objective in there to look at any council capital works with the view to potentially incorporating any public art elements. And I think that potentially some of the club memorabilia, because it is the oldest rugby league club in the state, would be incorporated under that. So if we could look in that scope of works at a space to sort of celebrate that history and that culture of rugby league through that memorabilia or newer public art elements, I think that would be fantastic. So if we could add that to the third point, or maybe a new point that, reference to council's adopted art policy.
Yeah,
that,
new point.
Yeah, so new point for in reference to council's adopted public art policy.
So just number 4, read it out for her.
So we're adding number point 4.
Oh, right. Oh, so,
Sorry.
we're going to add it.
So that was come along as a display of trophies and things over the years, membership boards, like membership boards and so on.
Well, possibly, but something maybe even more
And-
contemporary.
But you're saying over and above
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So that
which I think
in
is-
public, or it could be public art elements that celebrate the
History.
history.
And that's similar to what we want to try and do in the pool upgrade as well, is to have those historical elements embedded.
Windows of the past.
Okay. And can I just ask a question? The walking path, just confirming that is on the outside of the fence?
Absolutely, yes.
Excellent.
Where the track is currently in the grass, it'll be a great accessible pathway all the way around.
Yes, I know there's some people looking forward to that who walk that regularly.
I've just got one last question. So the budget on that last page, 22, shows just under just shy of 4 million.
That's correct.
So we've got a QS look at this in detail as we develop the plan.
Absolutely.
If it exceeds the value of the VPA, well, I know I can see the contingency of 300,000. If it exceeds it, then we have to come back to council and request X number of dollars out of the next year's budget to cover that, or the year after.
Sorry, through the chair. Yes, this is indicative. We'll be talking to councillors about how they would like to allocate a larger amount of VPA money. So this does not expend the VPA that we referred to earlier. There is additional funding. There are other VPAs that could also be applied to this site. So at this point, we're we're not actually asking for an allocation of funding. We're simply giving you an indication of what could be purchased around at that sort of dollar value.
I was just concerned we're locked into 4 million.
No, we're not locking into 4 million.
Obviously, we might need more depending on how we land, so it's a
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah, and there is a substantial amount of voluntary planning agreement funding that could be contributed to this site, or you may have a much bigger list of projects that you want to see that funding allocated to.
In a future date.
We'll have that conversation with you on Saturday.
I know, yes, I'm sure.
All right, any, sure.
Just to make a comment that the federal member for Barton got funding for female change rooms at Illidan. Can we look at the federal member for over here to see, apparently the federal government got money for female participation in sport. So I think that's something you really should be chasing up, especially if they got 1.3 million. It would be very handy.
Change room.
Discussion. So we've got a recommendation, as you can see on the screen. So included in that is scope of
Can we change
The
it to
council,
number 4, so
yeah.
the history of the club and rugby league in general?
yeah.
I think with the focus
Well,
on
it's
club,
the history of mascot,
The club is first.
history of mascot rugby league club.
And then rugby league as another concern. Rugby league club.
So, and I think number 3 needs to read that council includes or investigates an additional area above the main amenity for meeting / filming. Yep, and female in the scope of works. That's fine in the scope of works, and that female changing rooms are incorporated into the design. I would imagine that there would be an accessibility toilet and a change room. Yeah. Okay. Everyone. Is the mover, seconder happy with that? All right. I put it. All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. Thank you. We now move to the second item, which is the proposed disposal of land at 5A Waldron Street, Sandringham. Can I just get a summary, please? Move Councillor Souness, seconded Councillor Jansen.
Yep, through you, Madam Chair. So as presented to the Strategic Land and Property Working Group in November, this proposal was in response to a request from an adjoining owner to acquire a long strip of land of about 200 square metres to add to their property. The land itself is currently a drainage reserve, and as part of the process and for transparency, we approached all the 4 adjoining owners, giving them the opportunity to acquire all or part of the land, and 3 of them rejected that opportunity. As such, we entered into some negotiations with the owner of number 7 Waldron Street. The land itself is community land, so it does require a planning proposal to reclassify it to allow any sale to take place. So this report basically recommends that we proceed subject to the outcome of a planning proposal. It's also seen as a bit of a win-win. The strip of land is not maintained. A council clears the laneway, I guess. There's no footpath there, and it provides a bit of a security risk for us and maintenance liability. There's been evidence of things being dumped in the laneway as well. And of course, the win for the adjoining owner would be that they get a bit more security and some additional land, noting that they can't actually develop on the land because it's a drainage easement, and if the sale does proceed, we would protect our interest in the site by having an easement created over the drain so we could access it if need to be for future maintenance.
So, thank you for that. So in the picture, figure 2, so it's this house on the left, it's number 7.
That's correct.
Looking to purchase it, and they're looking to then purchase the whole strip going through to the other end?
The whole strip, yes.
And then how does that, you know, just from a future use perspective, do you foresee, like, what would they be using that for, a driveway or?
Well, what they've indicated to us, you can't actually see in the photo, but their garage and driveway is on the other side of the property. They've got very little backyard and got a number of kids, so
So it's going to be a cricket pitch.
could well be, yes. But as I said, you can't really develop it, so there could be facilities there. So if they put swings there, for example, and we've got to do some drainage works, they'll have to remove them during that process there.
And so just in relation to the commercial terms.
Yep.
So, so can you just unpack where we've landed with that?
Okay. So basically, we had it valued at our highest and best use, and the valuer came back at a certain amount, but discounted it by 50%. And the reason for that being that you can't develop it. There's the easement through it, and there's no other obvious buyers as well. So we've landed at a figure, I think it was 235,000.
Okay.
In addition to that, there's a number of costs, and I think he's actually already paid the fee for the planning proposal. So the owners would be responsible for all costs associated with that planning proposal, any subdivision costs, transfer costs, etc. So it's all clear cost to council, or nil cost to council.
Okay, great. So we don't have to mow it anymore.
And that's certainly one of the issues there.
Are there any other questions?
Can I ask, you mentioned that it's that the owners have sort of more than approached us.
They did.
Right? How did they approach us this particular time when our meeting was in November? The strategic planning group meeting was in November.
Yeah, no, the approach was a couple of years ago. It was actually back in the day when Michael McCabe was here, actually. So
just reinvigorated the conversation.
yes, yeah, well, there was a bit of discussion about compensation.
Is that 3 houses there? 4 that's the council. I can see 1, 2, 3 with a diagonal through it.
Yeah.
The 4th one in there.
Yeah, so there's 4 adjoining owners in total, yeah. So where you can see the demolished, that was obviously before the house was built. Yeah, because they've rebuilt.
That's the one who wants to buy it.
Yeah,
With the demolition.
So the demolition, okay.
yeah. So the house was rebuilt, probably in the last 5 years.
Oh, okay, there's photos of.
Yeah, the other houses are still there, existing, yeah.
It's an old photo.
It's a weird slice cutting through, okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Between. Any other questions? All right, the recommendation, all those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. Oh, no, we had, yeah, oh, sorry. And Councillor Jansen. Okay, the next item is the proposed closure and sale part of road reserve at the rear of 254 King Street, Mascot.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. This item was also considered at the November strategic Land and Property Working Group. So this proposal relates to a request from the owner of 254 King Street, Mascot, to acquire 34 square metres of the road reserve, which is actually in Hatfield Street, which is immediately at the rear of the property. The sale would be subject to a road closure process, and I guess it will overcome a bit of a planning issue there, where there's variations in the alignment of properties in that street. So some people have acquired them and they've built garages right to the back of it. So there's a bit of a sawtooth effect there at the moment. So this will give us, if we dispose of this property, and there's another one which will come to the March 1 meeting, it'll overcome part of that sawtooth effect, I suppose. And in terms of compensation, it was once again valued at highest and best use. The site with the additional land doesn't give them any development rights. What it can do, of course, is a garage, or, as I understand it, a granny flat could be built at the back there, but there's no subdivision potential there.
Any questions? Yes.
Can I ask a question? I can see that.
So, yeah, right to the gutter, yeah. So the property, sorry mate.
How far are they allowed to develop there beyond that? Can they build right on the gutter? Can they build their garage right on that gutter?
Yeah.
Through your chair, potentially, if that's the pattern of the street, then we would allow them to go to the curb.
Yeah.
But it'd be subject to site distances for car safety and that sort of thing. So it would really depend on what else is either side of it in particular.
It's a cul-de-sac.
Yeah, but is it the case either side? Is it the case either side that people build to the edge to the boundary?
Yeah, in the case of, this photo's an older one as well. So the property which is to the west, 256, that's the old house. The new premises there, they've acquired that strip at the back of theirs, and they've built right to the curb and gutter alignment as well, and they've got a garage access there. And there's a few others along that strip of Hatfield Street on both sides of the entry point there.
So there's no considerations you need to be so many millimetres back from the edge, like you are on the side boundary? Last time I looked.
Yeah, it'd be fairly consistent.
In terms of, there's no like building code restrictions there because it's a street. So it would come down to DCP controls, and I'd have to have a look at the area in a bit more detail to answer that.
Because I was going to say, our street stops there, or the council property stops here, saying you can't build right on that line, surely.
You can in some circumstances, like in a rear lane, because if garages are the character that's there and there's expected like a rear lane access to those properties, then we would allow it in some circumstances.
Is it not possible to get recent aerial shots for these reports?
That's possible.
Yeah, if we can, because it helps us see what's currently there in both of those different reports. That'd be good. Thank you. Any other questions? All right, so I put the recommendation. Oh, can I just ask another question? Sorry. These sales, once endorsed by council, like where does that money go to?
Strategic priorities would be our recommendation.
So that
So it goes into a reserve for future large projects that council may wish to pursue, whether that's things such as the rebuilding of major infrastructure, procurement of other investments, those types of things.
And when, like, what's the process? Like, as these sales occur, what's the process where council determine where they go then?
So that would, could note that in the reports that go up to you, and it certainly would go through in a quarterly budget review.
Thank you.
In this case, it would be at least 12 months because there's a road closure process to go through. And so there's other reports, and we've also got a, once the road is closed, roads aren't classified as such. So when they're closed, we've got to classify it as operational to allow the sale. So there's a lot of steps.
Okay. All right, I put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye. Against, declare it carried. That takes us to, new footpath selection criteria and priority list. So moved, Councillor Souness, seconded, Councillor Jansen. Can we have a report, please?
Through you, Madam Chair. This report provides information on the process that council has used to date to assess and prioritise requests for new footpaths, and it also provides the current list of prioritised streets for the construction of new footpaths. So basically we use a variety of criteria that's listed here to determine the priority of footpaths based on sort of the benefit, the need for that footpath in that particular location, the improvements to amenity and safety that it provides, and the benefit that it provides to the community. The list of new footpaths includes, as well as requests for new footpaths and areas that have been identified where a footpath may exist on one side but there is a demand for a footpath on the other side. It also includes every street that doesn't have a footpath on either side of the street currently. So all those footpaths have been assessed based on this criteria, and the list shows there's 149 locations listed, and the cost to provide new footpaths in all of those locations is currently just under $8 million. And if we were to construct footpaths in all those locations, obviously we would then increase our council's depreciation expense by around $100,000 per annum, and we would also increase our maintenance costs by around $140,000 per annum. So the recommendation that will come in relation to the City Projects program is that we allocate a budget of $250,000 for the next 2 years to construct new footpaths, and that would be in addition to any grants that we may be able to attain. So I guess this report's looking to endorse both the criteria that we use to determine the prioritisation of those footpaths and also the list of new footpaths.
Thank you. So just to clarify on the attachment 2, so it's the highlighted yellow ones that are on the priority list.
The highlighted ones are actually under construction, so they were funded by a grant that we received during the year, and they've now progressed to construction. That includes the one Councillor Souness mentioned earlier.
Okay, and then is that what's the blue one?
The blue ones is just where funding exists, so they're line items on an existing contributions plan where they were identified as potential cycleways on that plan. So there's money being put away in that plan to construct those cycleways in the future.
Okay, so then we've got the top 11 are the priorities, and that's what we're in. Oh, we're endorsing some of them. So we look like we're endorsing, what, 7?
No, the list as
Sorry,
it stands.
it's very small. I can't. Having trouble. Got Councillor Jansen's glasses here.
What are you wearing?
Because she's got 3 pairs.
I was going to say, just as Madam Chair, the yellow ones are the cart before the horse, so we need to endorse this, that they've already started them, correct? Yes.
Yeah.
The cart before the horse, it happens in council occasionally. And the other ones, higher up, are the ones to be done in the near future.
Yeah.
And then,
Chair, can I just add that some of the ones that are higher up that are not in the current program are there as a result of notices of motion.
hang on. Sorry, Mr. Barber.
Sorry. So some of the ones that in the top 11 there that are above the ones that are already funded, they've received an elevated priority because of notices of motion and the like. So you can see that their score in some cases is lower than some of the ones below, but they've been given priority on the instruction from council. So that's why they've kind of jumped ahead of the funding. So they would be included in the next allocation that was mentioned of 250,000. They'll be the next ones to be done.
So now that, you know, we've got criteria in place, so then that would then, you know, follow that pattern of focusing on not replacing footpaths that are still, they haven't reached their use by date yet, and focusing more on that priority. So are we foreseeing a type of approach where we're going to be continuing to keep a working list, if you like, or how do we determine where to next?
So through the chair, the renewal of existing assets is a different program that would continue as it continues to date. This is a list of new footpaths. Historically, in the last couple of years, we haven't had a council budget to construct new footpaths. So I guess this is when and if a budget becomes available for the construction of new footpaths, and when new grants are submitted for footpaths, we would refer to this list. But the rehabilitation of existing footpaths and replacing ones as they reach end of life is an ongoing program that would continue.
So what's our renewal budget as far as existing footpaths?
In the current year, I believe we've got close to 400,000.
Okay, so it's, all right. So it's sort of similar, because just thinking that there's a balance between new when none exist and then renewal. So I know that, you know, particularly with some streets where there aren't any, it makes it very difficult. I mean, at least if there's only one side, I mean, at least that's, you know, you can use something. So, and where appropriate, so that's, yeah, that's good. There's a refocus on that. So are there any questions from councillors?
Now, just one, it's Carrisbrook Street, which it's in that priority, but it was notified in 2021, and then because we had the election and it got lost in the system, where you've got all the photos of the person that tripped on the tree roots, but it is up in that east, so I'd like it to go further, but that's, I'll discuss that with the ward councillors. But the other thing is you've got these streets. How do you choose which side of the street you're going to do? Because there's a lady in Heath Street up the far end who's a nature lover, and God, you know, she will not want a footpath outside her house. So she'd be the other side, which would be the eastern side. But I'm saying, how do you choose the side that you're going to do?
Well, that's a hard question.
The easiest side, I guess.
The easiest.
We make a recommendation, undertake community consultation, take that feedback into account, and eventually.
Well, I know she definitely would not want a footpath.
Okay, so I was going to ask you some questions. In regards to the scoring methodology, how was that developed? Is that an in-house thing, or is that transport from New South Wales or some?
It's an in-house thing that's been in existence for quite some time. That's just been refined over the years. It's not dissimilar to criteria used at other councils. I think it's pretty comprehensive.
I was just interested. I was trying to work out the numbers for some of the streets, and I just couldn't get there. Maybe I didn't have all the information. But doesn't matter. And I've just noticed we're talking about $8 million to do all the streets on this list. At $250,000 just for note, that'll take 32 years to finish without any grant. That's not bad for 2023 council. When we undertake the works, we obviously, the fresh works, the new works, if you want to call it that, through the chair, they're done by subcontractors? Correct? Is that what we do in some in-house?
We have both in-house and contractors, depending on the workload. Yeah.
Okay. When they're subcontractors, are they overseen by someone from council? sort of done hundreds of metres, so to speak, and yet they're not coming back to fix it up quick enough, I think, because there's people that still have to live in those streets. So there's tree roots all over the place, there's timbers and so on. That's just an observation. Now, if you've got feedback from our people, from our staff, so to speak,
Yeah, sure.
they're learnings, I guess, that's what I'm trying to say. It's, my observation is something that may be useful, maybe not.
Yeah, I think as previously discussed, whether it's in-house or out, by the time we lay it and we take the boards away from the concrete, that's the time when we should be backfilling. If that hasn't happened, or tree roots are still being left around, or the work zone is still fenced off, which that should have already been removed, we'll direct that directly back to our supervisors and our staff.
You used, say, one area, but not taking the next area used.
Yep.
That's concrete dry, so it's been like a week.
Yes, well, they should be
Backfill.
backfilling as the timbers go. Yep, well, I'll address that.
And I think that concern, like for me as a councillor, that concern of creating a depreciation issue shouldn't be a big deal on our radar for in this particular instance, because I think it's a priority that people need to have a footpath if they need to get to A to B. There's a lot of ageing people. I see people with prams all over the place. We need to have footpaths where they need to be. Like having a list this long, to me, it's a little bit wrong, because this means there's no footpath at all in certain streets on both sides. Some streets, is it both sides on all this list?
Not the entire list.
But the majority of it?
Good 50% of it, I'd say.
Yeah, so 50% of the streets, and there's 2 pages, let's call it 1 page. Like with 2023, people have been in the mood in 1969, like, we should be well ahead of this game. Like, maybe it's the fault of successive councils or whatever, it's beside the point. I think we should accelerate how we're doing it. Doing about 3,000 metres each year, which is 250,000, it's about $120, $180 a square metre or something like that. I noticed on the costings. We're not moving fast enough. 120, yeah, depending on the width. Yes, you know, they're my concerns. It's just to me, it's a basic for what council delivers. We do roads, we do our rubbish, we do everything else, but a footpath is a basic.
So are there any potential grant opportunities or anything that we're aware of?
Through you, Madam Chair. In the current Get New South Wales Active program, we received $970,000 for the 9 new footpaths that are highlighted on this list. And there is another tranche of that program where we have applied for grant funding for a similar amount, and we're waiting to hear the outcome.
Okay, good. So potentially we can speed up the 32 years.
I understand we'll end up fixing them down the track, but we need to have them there in the first place.
So as far as the, working through the priority list, so that they've all been assessed as to, what type of housing is there and all those and the connections. Yep.
We just updated this. We made our own investigations through the GIS and our database to pull out every street where no footpaths exist on either side recently, and updated this list prior to this report, and more than doubled it in size. I don't anticipate that there'll be major changes moving forward.
So I guess in other words, if we get through this list, every street will have a footpath on at least one side. That's the aim.
All right. Well, Councillor Barlow.
Just a question. With the renewals, Councillor Hannah kept carrying on about, what was the street? Was it Salisbury or where he felt that the footpath shouldn't have been renewed? It didn't even look like it, but I think he even asked the question. Simple Grove, I think, or Salisbury. So how do you judge the renewal? I know that you inherited, so are we re-inspecting some of the renewals?
We have we inspect the whole network on a 5-year basis, and that gives us really detailed information on height of trip hazards, the number of trip hazards, and the proximity of trip hazards to each other, and then that list gets prioritised for the next 5-year program.
No other questions? Thank you for doing this piece of work. I know it's a big piece of work, but
It's
then,
excellent.
yeah, it really.
In 2 years' time, we'll have nothing to do.
No, I think it's really helpful, and having that criteria, then we can direct residents to, you know, if they are on a list, a rolling list, and the fact that then that avoids, you know, other things coming in when it's a methodology underpins it. So thank you for all that.
One more quick question.
You may.
Mr. Barber, if you were developing your own property and there was no footpath there, would you be obligated to provide one? Because I've noticed some places where there's multi-dwelling units, properties, there's an obligation. I can see there's grass, footpath, grass. Is that an obligation?
Yeah, through you, Chair, yes, we do take that opportunity. That includes if the curb needs upgrading or we need street trees or whatever it might be, we do make that part of the development approval.
No further questions? All right, I put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, declare it carried. Thank you everyone for being here tonight, and I declare the meeting closed at